everything has a share button now. You can just hit it, and it's kind of out there. You can be the original.
It's the
For
easiest thing.
someone can be the sequel to your original in finding this podcast.
It's like that bear that Homer puts on the keyboard to just tap the tab button. Just it's that easy.
And look how well that worked out. Zero problems with that. Everything went fine. So just tap the button. You're already
just
you're
type it
already on the
in.
internet right now.
Just
If you're
type it
watching
in.
or listening to this, you're already on the internet, and you probably have your phone within 6 inches of your hand. Just like, share, subscribe, do it, and then we can get back to talking about movies instead of doing these things. We'd rather talk about movies. Just click. This is on you now, hopefully, listener. This is you made us do this. This is your fault.
That's true.
Smash it. Smash the button.
By definition alone, they're inferior films. Films. Sequels suck. Sequels suck. Sequels suck. Films.
Hello, movie fans. This is Sequels Suck, the podcast all about sequels, prequels, remakes, and everything that's not the original. My name is Angus Brown, and joining me this week is, of course, Cable and a returning favourite, one of the Halloween experts that we have on the show, Shaun Crawford's here. Hello, Shaun.
Hello, sir.
Oh, so regal, so glorious.
So regal.
I know.
How are you guys? It's been a hot minute, huh?
It's been a long time. We were talking about this on our last episode when we finally got around to H2O. It's been almost, I think, 2 years since we did our last run of Halloween movies.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Is it really? That is wild.
It
That is wild.
flies by. Thankfully, they keep making the freaking things, and there's 13 of them, so we can talk about this forever because
I've built a career on it.
they're just always here. They're never going to go away, which is fantastic. To a point, because this week we are getting into Halloween Resurrection, which is a title that either I think brings about absolute confusion and blank faces from fans, or a deep emotion that usually isn't good. I always like to figure out like how we first came across these movies. Where did you first find Halloween Resurrection, Shaun? When did you first watch it and become aware of it?
I was one of the 6 people that saw it in the cinema. I was 2002. I was with my girlfriend at the time, and we toddled our asses off to the cinema, and I actually saw it theatrically. Because that was, I mean, like it came out, I'm sure we'll discuss it, but it came out in 2002. So it was like, it was peak. It was exactly what you wanted at that time, but whether or not it delivers a different thing. So I was a theatrical run, and I've seen it. Admittedly, I've probably seen it since then in the intervening 22 years or whatever. Probably seen it 5 or 6 times.
Wow.
It's one of those ones. I'm a fucking sucker for punishment. I keep going back. I don't know why. I don't know why I keep doing it, but I keep going back thinking it wasn't that bad. Like it wasn't that bad. And then I watch it again and I think, you know what, that's me. I'm good for another 5 years.
I think about 18 months ago, I decided to rewatch all the Halloween movies. And when I got to Resurrection, I was like, that's me done. I never have to watch it again for the rest of my life. And then here we are, and I've watched it again.
And then here we are. Fucking Cable, which I blame Cable.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of blaming Cable, when did you see it, Cable?
Will you believe that I did not see this at the cinemas, and I think it was the time when it came out I was keen to go and see it, and then I don't know how, look, I probably should have researched it before we got on, but I don't know the timeline of when it came out in the States to when it came out in Australia, but by then I'd already heard really bad reviews, people like paying the shit out of it, finding out or knowing or being spoiled that Jamie Lee obviously has pretty much the one scene at the start and then she's gone and it's this whole new chapter and all that sort of stuff. So I never saw it straight away. I think I would have seen it when it first came out in video and was never really super impressed. Weirdly enough, when I watched it the other night, I'm like, it's got a lot of hate and I know why it's at the bottom of most people's Halloween lists. But I was kind of like, oh, I don't hate it as much. Like, I don't think it's as bad as what people are saying, maybe? Are we
Cable, you're drunk. Go home. Are you... Mate, we're going to have words when this finishes.
No. What I will say is this time I watched it, I went in with... Maybe it was because I went in with so low expectations. It was like, well, it's still terrible, but it wasn't as terrible as I remember the first time I watched it. Maybe I don't know.
How often have you actually seen it? I think that's
Sorry?
probably. How often have you seen it?
It was probably the third time I watched it the other day in 4K. Yeah,
In
so
4K, no less.
yeah. And see, this is a funny thing. So, Scream
How
Factory.
can you jump to that? But go.
Yeah, no. Well, Angus is a comedy guy too, so he probably would. Didn't he? So, Scream Factory bought out 2 years ago, or maybe just a fraction over 2 years ago, for last Halloween, or the Halloween that year. They started doing their big 4K updates and all the bells and whistles sets for these movies. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and yes, the first 5 came out individually, but they didn't release 6, 7, and 8 straight away. You couldn't get them. But
Isn't that because of the rights? Because they switched to Dimension for 6,
well,
7, 8?
there's a little bit of that, but I think they knew not a lot of people maybe they're going to pick up 6 and Resurrection, but they'll pick up H2O. So what they did is they boxed that last 3 films. So that came out later, a few months later. You can only buy H2O with The Curse of Michael Myers and Resurrection. It came in a 3-disc or 3-movie box set, not individual. The first 5 are individual. These ones, like you said, maybe a bit of licensing, but also they want to make money. They want to sell the whole set. So it's like, package up. We know people buy H2O. The only way they can get it is they have to take these other 2 movies.
Until now. So they've just released H2O individually because I'm one of those people who refuse to buy 6 and Resurrection, but I wanted H2O. So I just bought
I saw H2O, yeah. I saw H2O on the shelf.
Yeah.
What
When I
about
saw
you?
it, I was like, oh, fun.
What about you, Gus? When did you see it?
I think DVD would have been the format at the time. I talked about this a bit on the last episode. H2O was like my introduction into the world of Halloween. So it's one that has a big soft spot in my heart. I was sort of aware of it, but it's H2O and Scream that really kind of woke me up to the Halloween franchise and horror, I guess, in a wider thing. I was in, I think it would have been like year 7 when Scream came out. And I remember like being so excited for Resurrection because I loved H2O so much. I don't know how I missed it at the cinemas. I don't know if it got a really short run in Ballarat where I would go to the movies or if it didn't get there at all. So when it came out, like first night it was on the shelves, I had it reserved back in the good old days where you could reserve movies before they even got released. Reserved before I went in, I was like, when is Resurrection coming out? And they're like, let me look it up. We'll reserve it. You've got a copy the first night. We'll call you. Went in, got it, came home, put it on. And like 15 minutes in, it was one of those experiences for me where I felt like I must have done something wrong for the movie to be bad. I remember just watching it being like, no, have I got the settings wrong? Did I put the disc in wrong? Did I get the wrong movie? Surely this is, because it looks like 6. It looks and feels like 6 for so much of the movie. I was like, oh, this must not be the right one. Oh, I've completely made a mistake. And as it went on, I was like,
I've never heard anybody describe a bad film like that. I thought it must be my fault. Like,
just for me, like H2O was quite a high. Like it was a perfect sort of film for me at that time. That's exactly what I wanted. And so, of course, the sequel would at the very least carry, I don't know, any of the same tone or ideas as the last one. Even just the vaguest whisper. No, we're just going to do absolutely nothing.
Oh, yeah, go, Sean.
no, please go.
No, I was going to say, the one thing that sort of did blow my mind recently, because I hadn't thought about this film for a long time, and I hadn't thought about what year it came out. I could have sworn it came out not long after H2O. They were like capitalising. Like, hang on, there's still a 4-year
Well, I
gap.
remember when it was announced as Halloween H2K because they were going to do like the Millennium.
Correct.
So I always thought that's what it was called. And then when I saw, because it was once I watched it once, I didn't watch it again for a long time. And then I was like, I should check that out. I'd forgotten it was meant to be called Resurrection. I kept looking for H2K and it didn't exist. So I don't know if it was
shame.
play or.
Because it's one of those, it's a film, I mean, albeit, okay, it's part 8 in the franchise, be that as it may, right? Every so often, there's an installment of anything that comes out, and it kind of changes the game a little bit, whether it's Jason X or it's, Hellraiser, the reboot, or whatever the case may be, film number, whatever, it's all the way down the line, and it comes out, and it's And I feel like Resurrection is one of those ones that there was a seed of something that could have been, right?
Yeah,
They'd
100%.
obviously learned a lot from Halloween H2O. Great. Can we keep that going? Rick Rosenthal comes back as director. You go, good, okay. He's tried and he's tested. He's here. It's got Jamie Lee Curtis in it again. Excellent, no problem. It's got fucking hot new stars, all that kind of stuff. And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work, which
And
for reasons I'm sure we'll get into. But
Well,
that's one of the worst things about it, the crushing disappointment of the promise that it held.
and that's it. The last time that I watched it, I dismissed every aspect of it entirely. And this time when I was watching it, I was like, let's look for the nuts and bolts. What happened here? And the story, the plot is an admittedly good plot in theory. Like the idea, not the execution in any way, but the idea that you would go back to the Myers house and essentially do a haunted house movie, but there's a real killer in the haunted house. Like whether it's a Michael Myers movie or not, that kind of concept that you go in for this, thrill ride kind of thing, and it turns out, no, the danger is real. That is a good idea for a kind of slasher horror movie. It opens you up to a lot of opportunity for fun kills, for sexy people, for all the kind of stuff you want as the very, very base level of a horror film. I think the biggest problem with it is they didn't seem to get past the first draft, for one, but also they did something that you guys might correct me, but I don't think any other Halloween movie does this. They just have the one storyline. Like there is nothing else going on in this movie except they're going into the Myers house and they're filming it. And the only time we really cut away is to watch Tyra Banks make the weirdest fucking coffee I've ever seen. or to cut to what looks like outtakes from an American Pie movie with these frat dudes in costume watching the screen. Like the rest of it is just the house. Like even the first Halloween, you've got all the stuff going on with Laurie, you've got the stuff going with her friends, you've got the stuff going on with Loomis, you've got all these different things happening. So anytime you're in one place too long, you move and the tension stays. We're just in this one small house. The tension's got nowhere to go except to just dissipate.
Well, it's an interesting point. I've never thought about it like that, but you're right. And I think maybe it is perhaps an unrealized potential, like you say, because you take another film like Cube, for instance, right? Cube is basically set in one room rather than, and let's be honest, the Michael Myers house isn't particularly, it's not like
it's so small.
Mansion. It's so small,
it's so
right?
Small.
But you can take Cube with the right characters and you can make something of that, right? It's demonstrable. It's proven. Like you can see it and it works. It's well, and you're right. There is a part of it that you feel like Resurrection should have been like that. You've got all these different dynamics of all these people in different spaces in the house. The problem is like they're all fucking boring people.
Oh God,
they're all
so
boring people. They've got nothing going for them. Nothing. Even the most talented of them, probably Katie Sackhoff. She is scraping by the skin of her teeth in this film because there's no movement. There's nothing to keep us going, like you say. There's no alternate plots. Yeah.
And we don't have any character development.
I've never thought about it, but you're right.
We get no character development for anyone. I think the only, and this sounds insane to say, I think the only character that's actually developed in any way that feels real at all is Busta Rhymes. It's Freddy.
Yes.
He's the only realistic character in this fucking movie.
Unbelievable.
And I was watching, I was like, I've met guys like him. When I was in the States, I have talked to guys like him. Like he's a real person. And you can see with every scene and line of dialogue, Busta Rhymes is like, I'm rewriting this shit and I'm going to do whatever I want because nothing that he says was written by those writers. I don't think the writers of this movie have ever met an African American, let alone tried to write dialogue for them. Because
Did
he's
you
just
see
like,
that he had, for some reason, he had one
really long
sideburn
side.
and nothing on the other side? Like I couldn't. It was like as soon as I noticed it, that was it.
That's all I could see.
I was tuned into it. It was weird.
It's fucking bizarre. It's so bizarre. And it's just, we get no idea of who any of these people are. They are the most generic cardboard cutout. Like there's the blonde, the redhead, the final girl, I think one of them is meant to be like the sexy guy, but he looks like the biggest dweeb. Then there's the nerd from American Pie. Like they're just like cardboard cutout, and I don't even remember their names.
Like, well, it's funny you say that about the script and not going through more than the first draft. used two names, character names that they used in the last movie. It's like, did they just like use the template for H2O and then just started delete, copy, paste or something? Because they use Charlie again and they use Sarah again. I'm like, choose different names. Come on.
They just got a generic white person name generator that they throw out there. It's funny you mentioned Cube as well, because one of the writers of this movie wrote Cube 2, which decidedly does not work with the same premise. So this guy is not good at small space movies, obviously. Yeah.
But you're right. You touched on something. I definitely think there was a decent seed of an idea here, but yeah, execution is everything, and I think they needed to have. I didn't hate the idea that initially we thinking they're finding this stuff about him, and then it's clearly been planted by Busta Rhymes' character and for the setup for the TV show. But there's some interesting ideas they sort of touch upon, but they just don't. They're never fully fleshed out or fulfilled or executed well to make it compelling enough as a story. But can I backtrack to something that I think we just sort of we went straight past? What were your thoughts of the whole Jamie Lee Curtis thing, and that, apart from that being controversial, that he was still alive, and he swapped out for a medic. Sneaky. That's something he would do. It just, I just don't know. I just don't know if I loved it, and I don't know. I mean, obviously Jamie Lee didn't really want to do another movie, so she's like, paid me enough, I'll come back for the
the story that she tells is that the reason she eventually signed on to H2O is because they were going to definitively finish the Halloween franchise. They were going to kill Michael Myers. And the deal was, I'll come and do it. We kill Michael Myers. And she initially pitches like kill Laurie as well. Like Michael and Laurie die together. Like she sacrifices herself to kill him. And that is the end. You know, Laurie and Michael are dead. There can't be any more. And the producers are like, yeah, absolutely. And then as the rewrites went on, they're like, actually, we don't want to kill Laurie, but we're definitely killing Michael.
Mustafa.
Yeah.
And then they finally got to the point like, all right, Laurie lives, Michael dies. You get to cut off his head. Like, you get to properly kill him. She's like, I'm in. And then a couple of years later, they go, we're making another one and we want you back. And she said, I understood at that moment that they were never going to kill Michael Myers. It was never going to be the end, because if they saw an opportunity for money, they would do it. So she said, all right, I'll only come back if you kill me then. And Laurie's like, I have to die on screen, no if, ums, and nothing about it. I'm dead. And they're like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, can we use your name on the titles? I'm like, yeah, whatever. So that's how she wound up coming back for Resurrection and dying off like pre-credits, is because she said she felt like she owed it to the fans to give them a definitive end to these characters. I feel like maybe, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I like Jamie Lee Curtis, so I'm not sure what it is that happened there, but it's not good.
Money.
Pick me.
Oh, yes. What do you think happened, Shaun?
I know. She was given enough money. You're kidding me, right? That's why she came back for 3 more on the back end of it as well. It's a bizarre thing, because for somebody who really didn't want to be there, her prologue takes up a huge amount of screen time. It's about 17 minutes.
Yeah, it's
when
pretty
all
big.
said and done. Like the actual title, Halloween Resurrection, doesn't show up until 16 or 17 minutes into the film. I mean, that's a staggering amount of screen time for somebody that just didn't want to be there. And she's gone through the motions. Like, she just doesn't care. Like, and there's no thespian on God's green earth that could deliver that final line with any kind of believability. That it was just like, even now, 22 years after the fact, every time I watch it, it makes my toes curl. It's awful. I'll see you in hell. Like, it's the kind of shit that is parodied, and they think they can get away with it. I don't get it. I don't
also
understand.
And you're leaving out the most important part of that line, which is she begins it by kissing her brother on the mouth, her murderous brother, who she's both terrified of and determined to kill, who has gotten the better of her despite 3 years of her pretending to be kind. Look, I've got ahead again. You asked what we think about the whole bringing Michael back, the resurrection element. I think there's layers to it. I think as a standalone idea, of, hey, we actually want to make another Halloween movie. We need to get ourselves out of this very deep hole. That's about as good as you're going to get. He crushed a guy's larynx. He put the mask on him. You know, finally making use of the fact that he wears a mask and nobody knows what he looks like.
Yeah.
Like it seems like Michael Fine was like, oh, if I take this off, no one knows it's me. Like he just has a brainwave. And so doing that, like crushing guy's larynx, putting the mask on the guy and just walking into the woods as an anonymous figure as a standalone idea is quite terrifying because Michael Myers is, as the shape, as the boogeyman is his originally intended John Carpenter version, is a terrifying concept. He is evil in a boiler suit. So realizing finally in this movie that if he chooses to take off the mask and walk into the crowd, he's literally anybody, is a terrifying idea. They do nothing with that whatsoever, and he's back 10 minutes later with, I think I'm going to call early as the worst mask in the entire series. But then like the payoff never comes. You know, he walks off into the woods. He waits 3 years to go and find Laurie, which we talked about a bit in H2O. Like, why the fuck is he hanging around for 20 years before he went and got her? Why is he waiting 3 years this time? He didn't have to regain his strength. Like, what are you doing, champ?
He was slinging lattes in Fitzroy to make ends meet.
Yeah. Like,
Obviously.
it's just, it's baffling. It's yet another example of this movie having the foundation there. Be like, great concept. You know, I think a fascinating idea for this movie would have been, what if in the flashback, Michael gives the mask to the guy and the guy's head gets cut off. And then Michael just isn't wearing a mask in this one. Like we can never pick him because he doesn't have the boiler suit and the mask.
Yeah.
That's absolutely chilling. You know, and then of course in the third act they have to do it where he pulls the mask off Freddy that Freddy's wearing and he puts it on kind of a la what he does in Halloween 2018. But there is a lot to be done there with what they already have and they just choose not to. He's just back and he has a mask. We don't know where he got it from. It looks like he's a drag queen now. It just is there. Like he's got fucking like blush going on. And he's got So I like the core concept. I think the execution is fucking atrocious.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's definitely something to be said about it.
Yeah, it's just a weird, when you have a sequel, and I know they've got to invent a way for him to be logically alive, and it made sense to have the paramedic be, have his throat crushed and this good old switcheroo. But then it undermines all that final ending with Jamie Lee Curtis. And
it pisses all over H2O.
And so you kind of go, you got this great movie, and then you just piss all over it it undermines that whole ending. And I was like, well, yeah, just.
Do you know who PS is an offside? Do you know the guy that he crushes the larynx of, the paramedic? Do you know who that is?
No.
He looked semi-familiar, but I don't.
That's Gary J. Tunnicliffe, and he is one of, particularly for Dimension films, he's worked with Sequel Suck podcast friend Patrick Lussier many times. Gary Tunnicliffe is a special effects guy. He stepped on to Dimension films somewhere around mid to late 90s.
Golden era.
He's been one of their go-to guys. He did Patrick Lussier's Dracula films, the Mimic sequels. He did the Hellraiser sequels. He did he even directed one of the later Hellraiser installments, Hellraiser Judgment, just as a complete aside. English guy. Is
that one of the direct-to-video ones?
Yeah. There was a horrendous one called Hellraiser Revelations. Which was literally that was made just to keep the rights, but the one after that, Hellraiser Judgment, Gary Tunnicliffe, he did it. He was behind it. It was actually, all things considered, it wasn't too bad, but Tunnicliffe himself seems like an absolute gem of it.
Amazing.
Anyway, that's a little aside for you.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That might be the most interesting thing about this movie. Honestly. Like, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know if there's anything else that's going to top it.
And we're done.
Yeah, that's it. We're out.
And thanks for having me, boys.
Shout out to Gary Tunnicliffe. I'm more interested, like the way they're bringing him back is fine, but I'm more interested in what you guys think about about Laurie's plan to kill him. Does any part of this make any sense to anyone?
This is the world's slowest fucking leg trap.
Just that relies on him standing in just the exact right position and not moving when she slowly winches.
Yeah, and then just looking at it while the winch slowly pulls the rope up. It's
Oh
just
my
trash.
gosh. It, like
The
that,
whole
she's had
thing.
3 years, and that's her plan. They also established for us in like 2 scenes prior, they're like, oh, she's a suicide risk. We find her on the roof a bunch. Obviously, she's up there setting her trap. But if you have a suicide risk who can get on the roof and you see a giant fucking noose, aren't you gonna be like, oh, we should take that down?
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
want to
How long has
anyone
that been up
using
there?
that. We won't leave
She's
the
got like a
winch.
she's got a soft toy absolutely filled with like sedative drugs that she just keeps, doesn't bother using. It's time and time again.
Well, I was
Everything in
gonna,
this film, every idea just is half baked.
was that the doll she has? Is that supposed to be a Raggedy Ann? Oh, it's sort of similar-ish. Well, Raggedy Ann is very famous.
I
Well,
think
a
it's
famous
Raggedy Ann,
doll.
but they couldn't get the rights.
Absolutely, and obviously that's famous for in the
Raggedy
Conjuring.
Stan.
Well, because in the Conjuring, instead of it being Annabelle, it was actually a Raggedy Ann doll. So there's a little.
A little aside for you. What? How do we feel about the? And this is very typical of. And speaking of, Hellraiser 8 did the same thing. Is this millennial vlogging, vodcasting kind of scenario? Like everybody's got their camera. Does this work? Does it not work? I think it's just garbage. And I think it's garbage. And the reason I think it's garbage is because has anybody ever seen Mark Evans' 2002 film My Little Eye?
Yes. Yes.
Right?
I don't think I've seen
Yeah.
that one.
Same concept done right. My
It
Little
works.
Eye's
Yeah, it's great.
terrifying. It
really
works.
is.
It's
really good. It's
scary.
fucking scary.
And this feels like it wants to be My Little Eye with a budget, because My Little Eye was micro budget, was like £2 million or something like that.
Yeah.
For nothing. This feels like it's kind of treading the same water, maybe in the same kind of territory. It just doesn't work. It's
All
like
of
two
the
films stitched together.
yes, all of the webcam footage looks like it was shot on like a 90s flip phone.
Yeah.
But it's almost as if they wanted to deliberately make it bad. What it all reeks of, I think, is a bunch of like old white dudes sitting around in the pitch meetings being like, the internet, this one's got to be about the internet because that's what kids are into now. But they have
Kids
no
are into
concept.
it.
They have no concept of internet, of like, she's got that weird Palm Pilot that can
Yes.
in real time write and send and receive messages. I'm like, that never existed. That's fanciful technology. That's
Yeah.
by the time we
Barely
had that
fucking exists
technology,
now.
we were texting each other. We never used that. But it just smacks of people who were given this idea, this brief, like, you have to make it about the internet. And they went, "Bleh." So they, I don't know, like asked their teenage son about it. And he's like, yeah, like webcams are real cool. And they're like, okay, that's all we're going to listen to. Everyone has a webcam. What does it mean? We don't know. We'll just make the footage look shit.
Well, it's funny. Like this is definitely an absolute product of its time because you think about you had American Pie in 98, 99 where you had obviously the boy set up the webcam. So you've got that sort of stuff happening. You have the start of the reality TV revolution. And then a TV show that came out in 2000 just blew people away, Survivor. And then they, on the back of one in their first ever season, they did a challenge that was very much, everyone mocks it because it was made to be like the Blair Witch Project. So it's all these things tied in. You got Big Brother, and they're like, well, this is a great idea. But again, coming back to the problem is you don't execute it, or you just, like you said, it's probably people that are too old and don't know the technology and don't understand how it all works going, I'll put that in the script and you guys make it work. And it's like maybe too many chiefs that don't know what they're doing trying to put together a reality show in a horror film.
It also, I might be way off, but it also kind of smells a little bit like a bunch of filmmakers who are sort of belittling the internet and streaming a bit. Like this is back in 2002, the internet was a new thing. This idea that you could just stream video footage over the internet was, I think, quite scary to the film industry because they thought, oh, Jesus, we're losing our control. But also they're like, well, this is shit. This is for kids stuff. And it kind of feels like all of the characters who are into it are belittled and mocked. Like, the guy who's helping out the final girl, what, Deckard or whatever he calls himself. He's kind of like, he's made to be like a dweeby loser by his other friends. Like, come to this cool party. Don't just like sit around and watch the internet. And then when they are watching, like, it kills the party. They go to this big frat party where everyone just wants to get drunk and fuck, and instead
Yeah.
they all sit around and watch the internet. And the party, like all the girls, if you watch their faces, they're constantly like, "Oh, like this sucks," and all the guys are like, "Whoa," and they all look like losers. And then the actual people in the haunted house, in the Myers haunted house, are all like the worst characters. You want them all to die. There's no redeeming characters. The only one who kind of is meant to be the hero is one's like, I don't want to be on the internet. I don't want to do that. And then you've got Freddy, who I think they intended to be like kind of the bad guy. Like he's almost kind of I feel like the original pitch was like model him on Vincent Price on House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
It was like he's this horrible carny who is like tricked these teens in. But either Busta Rhymes was too strong-willed or too interesting, and he winds up accidentally becoming the hero of the movie, which just it's insane.
It felt like initially when they wrote it, and at least for the first half of the film, you're like, oh, he's totally exploiting these kids.
Well, I mean, he
for
is.
financial
It doesn't feel
gain.
like he's
financial gain, but then it does feel like, well, his career actually rides on the success of this too, so he has to be equally involved in getting the show on the road, you know.
And Michael. Sorry, go.
No, go.
I was gonna say even Michael in this one, there was something. I mean, you know, it's been talked about ad nauseum, but John Carpenter really, I mean, he really did create the personification of evil in the original shape, right? It's just, and this just makes him rudderless. Like he's just massacring all these people. Like you kind of half understand why, and that's part of the scary thing about Michael is you kind of half understand why he does it in the first film is like because it's his sister and there's like a connection there. He's got fucking no connection to any of these people. One, maybe I fucking missed it, but why don't they just fucking leave the house? Did I miss that?
I thought the same thing. I think there isn't either a throwaway line or an allusion to the fact that they get locked in by Freddy and the producers, and no one can leave. So Freddy unlocks the back door to come in and like fix stuff or fuck with stuff when he's dressed as Michael Myers, but they can't actually, like if you look, the windows are boarded up. I think they're actually physically locked in the house as a part of like the realism. But we also see a couple of times someone just like lightly shoulders a door and it bursts open. So if they wanted to get out, it's not that hard. Like it's pretty easy to get out of a house.
Yeah.
But I feel like Michael's just completely directionless. Like he's just wandering around, just for the fuck of it, just murdering.
This was in my notes.
But like you said, like how is he getting in?
Well, he's got his weird tunnel that there's under. I don't know that. We'll get to the tunnel in a sec. But one of the things in my notes was, it's always kind of been a weird thing about the Halloween movies that Michael only seems intent on killing his family. Like anyone else is collateral damage. It's his sister, and then you find out that Laurie is his sister, and then it's Laurie's daughter, and then it's Laurie's daughter's daughter, and it all just kind of centers around family. And even in the new trilogy, it's about Laurie and her daughter and her granddaughter. This is the only film in the franchise where like his goal isn't to kill his family. He kills Laurie. And that's kind of the end of the movie. Like, mission accomplished.
Should be.
So
that's the end of the franchise.
You're right that he's rudderless because he's achieved his primary goal that he's been trying to do for 22 years. So, of course, he's got fucking nothing to do now.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost
just like
it's
shuffling his toes and like navel gazing, just like, what are you doing, Michael?
It's like when guys who retire from their jobs show up at the office just to like say g'day, and everyone's like, what the fuck are you doing here, Bill? You retired, mate. He's like, yeah, I just thought I'd just pop in.
Yeah.
Like he's killed everyone he wanted to kill, and now he's just like, oh, I guess I'll kill this girl. Like, I don't know. I guess I'll just, sure, I'll stab her. I guess that's what I do. Like, he's got no fucking point.
Well, he's in their house, his house. So that's the only other anchor point, I think, even though that's flimsy as, that he's got. Yeah, but he's clearly living under the house, and he goes there and they're in my house. Well, you know, I'm going to get rid of these squatters that are in my house.
That is one thing that they did that I thought was at least mildly interesting. When you find the secret basement tunnel thing under the house for some unknown reason, and you see his like gross bed and the half-eaten carcass of some animal, and someone says like, I think he's been living here the past 3 years. It's like the one thing they do in this movie that establishes how fucking creepy this guy is. Like when he goes back to a house that's boarded up, he could like sleep on a mattress on the floor in the actual house. Like no one else is coming in that house until his producers show up. But he chooses to live underground. But it also answers like something we talked about in H2O is like probably that's where he's been for the previous 20 years as well. Like he's been living under his old house until for whatever reason he decides to start up again. But that was an interesting choice that again they do nothing with. Like look at the horrible lair of this monster. Never ever talk about it or worry about it again. Don't even really react to it. Just kind of go ew and keep walking.
But then I sometimes I wonder, like, I think it's an interesting idea, but then again, it's like if there's a backstory they create in a sequel, like especially like you were saying before, Shaun, if it's the 8th film and it kind of undermines what's been set up previously, or the mystique of something you say a lot, Angus, in this podcast, not showing too much of the monster, or don't explain the monster. I think to me that started explaining, well, he's not pure evil. It's because he was abused as a child. This is why he's like that. And I think I don't have an issue necessarily with that idea, but it feels like, well, that kind of undermines the stuff that John Carpenter set up.
That's all established in the film as being fake, isn't it? They say that Freddy planted all that stuff. So we kind of get this idea of why Michael did it, and then it's pulled away because they realize that Freddy put fake skeletons in the wall, which, I mean, that's a scene that absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. No. Like they happen to find the tunnel to go down. They happen to lie down and start rooting directly next to the giveaway wall. But then the wall looks heavy enough to crush a human and falls out. And they don't notice either A, the wall doesn't feel like rock. It feels like styrofoam. The skeletons have no weight to them. They're like nothing.
Which means Freddy, now that you think about it, which means Freddy's knocked this fucking wall down, hacked all this shit behind it, and then just labored picking up all the bricks and reestablishing the fucking wall again. Like, that's dedication, Freddy.
And you're right. It would be Freddy, because the other thing we learn about this crew is there's one fucking person in this production company. It's like the one camera guy who gets killed early, and Tyra Banks, who I don't know. I have no idea what her character is meant to be. I don't know if she's meant to be a producer, if she's meant to be his girlfriend. I don't know who she is. She gets like two scenes
because everybody was Jewel was in movies, remember? And then like everybody, like it was at that time where pop stars and Beyonce was starting to pop up and shit. And
we got let's
just get Tyra Banks.
Kelly Rowlands? Is it Jason? Kelly Rowlands. Yeah, we did.
And Brandy was in.
Brandy
last summer. Yeah.
Oh my god, the early 2000s. They really were just like, what can we do?
Fucking anything goes. Anything goes. No rules. Angus, no rules. Angus, there should be a couple of rules. Like,
it's almost like some sort of structure helps a story. I don't know. Maybe I'm off base.
Maybe you're off base. Look, all that being said, the film was ultimately it was a relative financial success, wasn't it? It was made for like a budget of like 50 million or something, and it made 90 million or 100 million or something like
really?
That. Yeah, like it actually did all right.
We're gonna have to fact check it.
Fact check me away, boys. I'm willing to.
Oh no, I don't doubt what you're saying. I just that sort of surprises me still.
It was a viable enough hit, which is probably why they kept making them after Resurrection. But
which we will talk about soon. We will talk about soon. The Rob Zombie.
I'm in for it. Angus and I. This is going to be fucking showdown in Manila. Like the rumble in the jungle. But look, it was enough of financial success. But do we think that that's because it was riding on the Halloween name, or was it because it was a good film?
I think it was.
The fans have you ever met a fan that actually likes Resurrection?
I've never met one in real life, and I've watched a few like sort of documentaries and fan made documentaries about Halloween and the ongoing legacy of it. And people are obsessed with the most minute stuff from the Halloween films. Like guys who are in one scene and get electrocuted, who are unnamed characters, and people will dress up like them and go to conventions and be like, hey, I'm fucking like no one I've ever seen, heard from, or spoken to has ever been like, you know what I love? Resurrection. I'm going to dress up as random frat guy number 3. I literally can't remember anyone's freaking character. And full disclosure, I finished watching this movie about a half an hour before we started recording, and I still can't remember their fucking
So did
names.
And if I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't even make it. I've got the screen that's behind the camera. There's 2 minutes left to go before the credits roll.
You're not.
I don't remember anybody's name. Frankie? No, Freddie. Freddie's the.
I remember Freddie because that feels like, and it's spelled Freddie, and it feels like they deliberately called him Freddie because they wanted Freddie to beat Michael in this movie, and so they're getting a little fuck you to the
Kung Fu scene.
Yeah, his kung fu scene. You know what? The best line in this movie is "trick or treat, motherfucker," and he butchers it. Like he bursts through the door. He comes through the door and then he looks at Michael Myers and he goes, "Trick or treat, motherfucker." There's like an eon of time between.
An unnatural pause.
He's just staring at him for so long, and then he says, "Motherfucker."
He's all this
like,
shit, all that kind of like, "Damn, Freddie,
yeah,
you're the man," all that kind of shit. Like
the insane stuff in this movie where like he is narrating himself when he's watching the kung fu movie, and then he gets a knock on the door. Yeah, what? God damn it! What?
Freddie don't like this.
Freaking Sarah. Oh, she's the Sarah. So yeah, Sarah comes to the door, and then he's like, "Oh shit, I'm missing my Wu Feng." And then he goes, and then he's talking to her, and then she leaves. He's like, "You did so clever, man. The shit you come up with, pat yourself." And then he literally pats himself on the back, and then he goes, "Oh shit, I'm missing my kung fu," and then like closes the door and keeps talking to himself as he goes back to the kung fu.
This is the shit that tips me over the falls, right? I'm all for a fun horror film, right? I'm all for gory kills, a bit of black humor, whatever the case may be. But the one thing that absolutely boils my piss when it comes to horror films is this content-free, like the cast are just making it up as they go, nonsense to justify them just getting to the next kill. And Halloween has proven to be better than that. And whenever the franchise dips into those valleys, Halloween 2 almost got it in there, and it just narrowly made it out. Halloween 4 almost got it in there. Halloween 5 was a fucking shocker. We won't talk about that. But like Halloween
6
Resurrection,
is a shocker.
Halloween 6. But see, here's the thing. I'll watch Halloween 6 over Resurrection any day of the week.
I agree with you. I definitely agree with you. Because at least that one has characters and it has like...
It's got characters. It's got an evolution. It's got a momentum.
Going with the computer-based druid rune program that's insane. But at least they were like, we're taking it seriously. I don't think they took... I don't think you can be the comedic relief and the hero in the same movie, and that's what they did with Freddy. Like he's the comedic character, but he's not self-aware enough to realize he's the comedic character, so he thinks he is the hero until eventually the film just kind of goes, all right, fine, fucking be the hero, I guess. Like our leading lady is boring as shit, so I guess you can, or we got no one else. We killed everyone else, so I guess it's Freddy. like it's almost as they got to the last couple of days of shooting, they're like, shit, did we kill everyone? Fuck, we killed everyone.
Yeah.
Who's going to save the day? And then Busta Rhymes is just like, "What's up, motherfucker?" And they're like, "Okay, I guess it's you."
This guy's gonna be our man.
He's gonna have to help everyone. It's so funny because this Halloween movie, more than any other Halloween movie I can think of, feels like a Halloween movie made by people who have never seen a Halloween movie, and that's baffling because it's directed by the guy who directed Halloween 2. Like, he was there in the golden days.
Didn't Rick Rosenthal, if I'm not mistaken, the director of Resurrection and Halloween 2? Didn't he play the Shape in Halloween Part 1? I'm fairly certain he did. I've got a sneaky suspicion. I could be wrong.
Nick Castle's the Shape.
You're absolutely right. It's Nick Castle. I'm so sorry. You're absolutely right.
And I think Tommy Lee Wallace played a little bit of the Shape in some of the shots, and he directed Halloween 3.
Yes.
Correct.
Rick Rosenthal, his filmography is interesting.
Patchy. Yeah.
He directed the Sean Penn Bad Boys, which has become like a cult classic favorite. Yeah. He's mainly a TV director these days. And like look, I'm glad the man is working, but some of these titles, like Shattered or Gigantic or Being Erica, I have never heard of these TV series in my life. So he's not been given the plum jobs, unfortunately. In fact, his last feature film was something called Nearing Grace in 2005. Any Nearing Grace fans on the pod tonight? Have we ever heard of?
I've heard of Saving Grace.
Nearing Grace is a romantic comedy. His last
Starring Busta Rhymes?
starring Busta Rhymes.
Fuck, we can only hope.
His last known feature film, his last horror film, his last stab, pardon the pun, at doing anything like this is this. This was his last hurrah. He hasn't been allowed to make horror movies or really movies since Halloween Resurrection.
Oh, that's fair enough call.
I mean, Rick, come on, man. Like, you've been here before. You had a chance to do something great. I couldn't help but think of, God, his name's gone out of my head, the director of GoldenEye for the Bond films, who came back and did Martin Campbell, who came back and did Skyfall. And you see this happen, very, very frequently. Casino Royale, sorry, thank you. Where a director will come in, and a hot point in the franchise or resurrect a franchise, pun again, and do something great and then go away and come back decades later and do it again. You're like, oh, wow. And I wonder if there was that idea with Rick Rosenthal, was like, hey, let's get the guy from Halloween 2. Like, Carpenter's never going to do it. So let's literally go the next best thing and get the guy from 2. And we're going to make this the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. Because I mean, you could probably see this through line that H2O is almost like the reboot, and they're looking at that as the new number one, and then this one would be number 2. We'll bring the guy that did Halloween 2 back, and it doesn't always translate.
It's a
shame because I was going to say it's a shame because it can work. Like it is proven to work. Steve Miner, for instance. I mean. The Halloween H2O. Steve Miner's the only person that's directed episodes of both of the arguably the biggest horror franchise of all time. Steve Miner did Friday the 13th 2 and Friday the 13th 3, then comes over to Halloween and does Halloween H2O. Like, he's kind of like the James Gunn of the horror at the time. Like, we'll do Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy and we'll do Suicide Squad, and we'll cross over these franchises, and like, it can work. And I know that Rosenthal didn't cross the franchises, but it's almost like a franchise crossing, given the amount of time that's gone, the technological evolution, the evolution of the franchise and the fan base. Because let's not forget, the difference between Halloween Part 2 and Halloween Resurrection, it's probably the same amount of time that's gone from Halloween Resurrection to now. Like, it's a considerable amount of time. And we're not talking the same... Yeah. We're not talking the same filmic language. We're not talking about, like, everything has evolved. So it's not so dissimilar. But if you feel like if you can get it as close as you could in Part 2, how did you drop the ball so badly for Resurrection? My guess is like you said earlier, Cable, is Harvey Scissorhands. Like, he's probably come in and fucking cut it to ribbons, because he was at that time, he was famous for that, man. Everything that Dimension was releasing, he absolutely fucking massacred the films.
Yeah,
he absolutely turned them inside out. So it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, you look at I don't want to go too far down the road hole, but you look at, in hindsight, movies like Scream 4 that was heavily edited by the Weinsteins. They really wanted to pick it apart and reshoot stuff. And then Patrick Luzier was telling us about Mimic. He had to help finish Mimic and re-edit that, because that was heavily, slaughtered by them as well, and, reshoots and stuff. And, these producers, I mean, they're putting up the money, I get it, but, they're not always the right people to be making the decisions. I know sometimes they might have to make a particular decision if it means they can make another sequel or whatever, but they're not the experts all the time. Like,
definitely not.
Just trust the people you put in place to get the movie done. And if it's bombs, so be it. But yeah, it's I feel like this is probably one of those films that had a lot of that as well.
I also wonder if there was a little bit of trying to progress into the next, I guess, wave of horror. Without really knowing what it was, because the early 2000s are notoriously fucking terrible for horror films. They are, it's all new metal, Platinum Dunes remake bullshit, and it's quite frustrating to try and find decent, particularly like budget films. You know, the indies were kind of the ones that were doing something a little bit interesting, but people still weren't doing that much with horror in the early aughts. And the whole internet thing, the whole webcam thing we talked about, I wonder if that's part of it. I also wonder a little bit if, like, Malik Akkad, Mustafa Akkad's son, so Mustafa Akkad, for anyone listening who's like, huh, is the producer from the day dot of Halloween films, has kind of shepherded these movies. And
well, he fronted the money for the first one.
He
so
fronted the
he's
movie,
always had
and
a say.
he went and said, "I want a movie about, you know, babysitters on Halloween."
Babysitter killers, yeah.
And as much as John Carpenter is sort of one of the architects of this character and this world, and from Halloween 6 onwards, Malik Akkad, his son, came on board as a producer as well, and has, I feel like, slowly sort of taken over a bit up until Mustafa's death in 2005. I wonder if, like, bringing in your son to sort of the family business, I guess, perhaps Mustafa might have leaned on him a bit for his youth. I mean, like, what's cool now? What's hip now? Like, you know, I was a young guy in the 70s and 80s making Halloween, and I've kind of kept it going, but I don't know what the fuck YouTube is. I don't know what the fuck webcam is. And I wonder if, like, you get a young, inexperienced producer who is given the reins. You know, you sort of look at Six is a mess, and then H2O, they really, it feels like they trusted in Kevin Williamson and Steve Miner and kind of gave it over. Maybe I'm out of my mind.
It's still no. I don't think you're out of your mind. I think you've got a good point, because correlation doesn't mean causation, but the proof is in the pudding. At the end of the day, the proof is in the pudding. Halloween was always relatively, almost trustworthy, right, as a franchise. I think Friday the 13th is more stable.
Yes, I agree.
Friday the 13th, unlike Halloween, Friday the 13th has never been great, but it's always been consistently good, right?
Yeah, Friday the 13th never hit the highs, but it also never hit the lows.
Exactly. where Halloween is much more of like a franchise like this. But I don't think there's anybody in their right mind would deny that by the time that this fucking franchise gets to 6, it's been much more choppy. But the point is that I was going to make was, I reckon Halloween H2O probably had a lot of the old fucking scissor hands in it as well. Let's not forget, it's only minus credits. It's like 72 minutes long.
Yeah, it's an incredibly short film.
It's like, I've seen episodes of Game of Thrones. Not even not even the pilot episodes, just like fucking episode 6 of season whatever, that run longer than Halloween H2O.
And it's darker.
Yeah, dark as well. And I get the feeling that H2O probably suffered a lot from the editing. It's just maybe it was more fortunate than the rest of them that it came out in a more cohesive fashion. Because everything since then, certainly up until Blumhouse took over, was a mess. There's no two ways about it. It was like a constant downward trajectory.
There is this
film that's worse is 5. 5 is the only film in the franchise that's completely fucking unwatchable to me. It's just garbage.
I still think I would watch 5 over the Resurrection. I think
Really?
I would watch. I really. It's at least it. 5 has kind of an energy to it that is of its time. It feels like it took place in an era, in a town, with characters, and you can watch and go, hey, this isn't a great movie, but it's a movie, and it feels...
Yeah, maybe you're true, yeah.
It feels like a Halloween movie of that time. This doesn't feel like a Halloween movie of any time. It feels totally displaced from anything.
Really? No, but I think it is very much 2000s, that reality TV, found footage kind of almost generation.
It
I think
feels
you
like
know
a
that's from that
2000s
time.
movie, but it doesn't feel like a Halloween movie. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
about it.
It doesn't feel like a Halloween film.
Yeah, there's nothing
It
except
feels
the
like
fact
Michael
that
Myers is just fucking wandered in from another set somewhere.
Yeah.
It's just like, we're on this film now. Okay, like...
I think the best example of that is the scene where Freddy like karate kicks him through the window and he gets hung on the cables. He literally, like, he's standing there and then he turns around, looks around, and he just stands there and watches Freddy run up and kick him as if he has just walked into the room and be like, am I in the wrong fucking house? What's this guy doing? Like he does nothing. He just stands there. And this is a character who we have watched multiple times, including this movie, crush a human skull with their bare hands with no effort. Like, he's superhuman in strength. and he gets kicked through that window like a little baby.
Yeah.
And also does
Like a fucking Cabbage Patch Kid.
Did you guys get the impression of this movie that perhaps the writers or the director were treating Michael, the character, as though he had some sort of mental impairment? Because he seems in this character to be someone who isn't cognitively functioning. Like, he doesn't seem like the embodiment of evil. He
seems a bit simple.
Well, he seems very much like the character at the start of the movie with the clown mask who knows all the stats about every killer ever.
Yeah,
except he doesn't know the stats about Michael fucking Myers because he tells us Michael Myers kills all these people, and then he gets to the previous movie and he goes, killed 4 students. He killed 2 fucking students in H2O. He didn't kill 4
That's
students.
True.
What the? Did you?
Yeah.
And this is what I mean. Did nobody watch a Halloween movie? Did nobody go, hey, should we check out the one that just came out? And they went, nah, don't worry. We won't bother.
Nah, fuck it. No, yeah,
but yeah, they seem to treat Michael like he is like that character, like sort of someone who has some sort of, I don't know, mental impairment, who is on the spectrum somewhere. It's not like, oh, this guy's evil. It's like, this guy kills people because his brain isn't working properly. Because there's so many scenes where he just kind of like stands around and just looks like a lost little boy. He's like, I guess stab or what?
And
did I do that?
Stab? Like, stab. And can we talk about who the person that actually played the Shape as well? See, this is one of the things, right? Is like, and I know you're gonna fucking disagree with me, Gus, and I don't care. Is that Tyler Mane playing the Shape in Rob Zombie's 2 films was fucking genius. Like, Tyler Mane's as tall as I am. Like, he's like 6'8", and he's broad, and even he just cuts an imposing figure. If he stands in a doorway, he fills the doorway. Like, it's a terrifying prospect to face off against somebody like that.
Yeah.
This guy's just, I mean, he's built like my sister. Like, it's weird. Like, he's just this little dude with a big mask. It doesn't work. It doesn't feel terrifying.
No, he's just a little guy. In fact, I was just looking him up. So the guy's name is Brad Laurie.
Oh, yes.
He looks like I don't know, he looks like he wants to be a model or something. Like, he's got this lantern jaw kind of guy. But one of the first things that comes up when you're reading about him is he met with Freddie and Jason director Ronnie Yu about taking on the role of Jason Voorhees, and Ronnie Yu rejected him because he was too short. So your point is well made and definitely echoed by other filmmakers.
But even that, like, I just don't understand how you. I know a lot of the actors haven't always come back. Same thing with apart from Robert Englund as Freddie. I mean, there's a few Jasons have sort of come back, but there still has been a little bit of a revolving door. They haven't always been the same guy, obviously. But I do think surely that's a prerequisite. Someone, if you're going to be in the suit, you've got to have some sort of stature, whether that is at least 6 foot, 6'2", 6'3". Like Shaun said, have a decent broadness about you. Have some intimidation about your size. Like,
I always think Michael shouldn't be necessarily like. I agree and disagree with you, Shaun. I think Tyler Mane is fine as Michael Myers in Rob Zombie's Halloweens, because whatever's going in there, we'll get into next episode. But that's its own thing. But I think in terms of like the original continuity, the idea, like you look at the original Michael Myers in Halloween. He doesn't have to be this enormous hulking mass to be scary. Like a dude walking across the road in a boiler suit, and you look at him, like in the scene where Laurie's trying to get into the house and she's locked out, she's trying to wake up Tommy Doyle, and he's just walking across the road. Yeah. Fucking petrifying. He's not.
He gets every single time, gets my
every
heart
time.
Absolutely racing.
I've lost track of how many times I've seen that movie, and every time I'm like, he might get her this time. I fully believe it. Like, I'm so stressed.
Yeah.
Because he's just a man walking across the street. Like, he's not.
How tall was Nick Castle? Nick Castle's
still a big guy.
Yeah.
Nick Castle was still about 6'4", I think. He was still a big dude.
Is he really?
Like,
wow.
Yeah. I'm fairly certain, yeah.
I think, did Dick, I should know this, Dick Warlock was Michael in the second film, maybe. He was definitely shorter, but still had sort of.
But he was. Dick Warlock used to be a stuntman, though, didn't he? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So he's got that fucking broadness, and he's like, when he moves. there's a thing, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, is that if you've ever been in the presence of like people who are exceptionally fit, like unnaturally fit, they don't move the same as other people. It's weird. It's almost like they're rigid, like it's a bizarre mechanical, not deficiency. I don't know what to call it, but
they're
Dick
calcified on the outside.
yeah, but Dick Warlock moves like that. Dick, even for what he lacks in height, he has that strength, stature. Like that this guy just doesn't have. This guy's garbage.
No, he really is not. He's not intimidating physically. He doesn't do anything as the character. And I know people sometimes get confused or annoyed when you hear fans or even actors. You listen to a lot of the actors who have played Jason Voorhees over the years talk about how they play Jason.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will kind of be like, "What do you mean play Jason? Like you're just fucking a guy in a suit and a mask." It's like, no. If you look at those movies, you will start to notice some do it way better than others, and the Michaels are the same.
Yes.
There is a character to be played.
100%.
It's not just you're not just wearing a costume. It's almost like the actor in this movie feels like he's wearing one of those giant like animal suits where you can't see anything of the human
Like
being.
a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah,
thing.
he's just
Like,
inside this
yeah.
thing, and he's almost like trying to puppeteer the boiler suit and the mask. But there is no character to his.
There's
Michael
no
Myers.
connection to the character. Yeah.
No, and it's
I agree.
that alone almost makes this movie worth watching, just for the fascinating study of like how important the acting part of playing a character like Michael Myers is, even though you never see the face. I think the greatest example that I can think of off the top of my head is like Hugo Weaving in V for Vendetta. Like the guy just has a fucking mask and gloves and a hat on, and he talks. And obviously Michael can't talk, but he is a fully formed character that you fully connect with, even when he's not talking. Or you look at, the Batmans are another one. Batman doesn't have to talk to really sell the character, and you look and you're like, some Batmans are shit. And it's the same with these horror icons.
Yeah, I agree.
And this guy just he's not acting. No. He's just walking into the room.
Yeah, he doesn't have what it takes.
Or he wasn't given what he needed. Like, I don't know what happened to be that. Yeah. Because Dick Warlock is a great Michael Myers. And if Rick Rosenthal can get him to be so fantastic, why couldn't he do anything with old mate? Like, what happened? Was everyone just switched off that day? I don't know, man. It is a fascinating movie for all the wrong reasons, I think.
Completely agree.
For all the things you look at and go, coulda, woulda, shoulda.
But it's not even fascinating because it's interesting. Like there's misfires in cinema history that, like, if you think of Michael Mann's film The Keep, I don't know if you've ever seen Michael Mann's film The Keep, right? Michael Mann's film The Keep, it doesn't quite work, but god damn it, it tries things that I've never seen before. It asks big questions, of the audience, like, that part where the demon Molisar asks Ian McKellen, who's a Jewish doctor, I'll give you anything that you want. I can even make the Holocaust go away. Like, what horror film dares to make its audience think that fucking hard, right? But ultimately, for all of its beauty and for all of its risk-taking, The Keep doesn't quite work, but it's an interesting case study in watching a misfire by somebody who knows what they're doing, who shot for the stars, and they might have just made the moon, but it's still an interesting journey. Halloween Resurrection isn't like that. Halloween Resurrection doesn't have the guts to shoot for something truly imaginative and truly ingenious, and as a result, it just feels like a blasting cap as opposed to a fucking rocket ship. And it is such a misfire that it is at times excruciating to watch. You're not even being dragged along by the interest of how far are we going to push this? What are they going to try next? Even if they don't make it, what are they going to try next? It's just so pedestrian. It's so pedestrian.
And I think in the lineage of this movie, a great example to put it up against is Halloween Ends, which is such a divisive movie for so many people.
Yeah.
But you can't argue they didn't fucking try. Like, you might hate it, but you can't argue they didn't go, hey, you know what? We're 13 films in now. Let's just fucking swing for something different. Let's go for a totally different idea for this one and see what happens. Yeah. And whatever happens, happens. But we are gonna shoot the shit out of this movie, and we're gonna give it everything we got, and then we're gonna say this is what it is. We tried our fucking best. And I think everyone who has watched and bemoaned Halloween Ends recently should go back and watch Halloween Resurrection because nailed it. This is what happens when they don't try. You know, I know there's 13 of the Halloween movies, but the other way of looking at it is there's only 13 Halloween movies, and I fucking love these movies. And the fact that some of them, including this one, wasted the opportunity so immensely, it's infuriating.
It's infuriating. It's exactly right. It's infuriating. Like you had it. You had the fucking opportunity. You had the cast. You had the director. You had the budget. This isn't like somebody making something on an oily rag. Like they gave you the money to do it. You've already done it. Like how it's infuriating. How did you fucking drop the ball so badly, guys? Which is why
it's kind of like they said, "Oh, okay, what did we learn from H2O?" And instead of thinking of all the positive things, they go, "Well, what we learned from H2O was we had issues with the mask. There was a couple of different masks. Some looked shit. We had to use CGI. Let's design a really good mask, spend as much money on it as possible, and let it be consistent." Which it is consistent, but it's consistently shit. So it does, like that mask. It's funny, like I hadn't thought about it too much until Angus brought it up, but it also looks like a mask, like they spent money on it. Like there's something about it that's like
I think they spent too much money on it. That's the problem. They had too many passes at it.
So they've blown the budget on Jamie Lee Curtis and a mask, and then fucking what else can happen?
I mean, she must have eaten so much of that 15 mil for this to be so little on the screen.
Such a good, like the mask, over-designed mask. You heard that expression that a camel is a horse designed by committee?
Yes.
That's what I feel like this mask is.
That's like, exactly what it is. Do you think this movie derailed the careers of the people in it? Because I'm not recognizing a lot of names, with the exception of Katie Sackhoff, who went on to do Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah,
but even then, she had to go back to TV to sort of and even then, most of her credits and her popularity or her cult status is TV related stuff. Like she's famous now for Battlestar Galactica and Bo-Katan in Clone Wars and The Mandalorian and stuff. So, I mean, she's done other stuff.
She's Bo-Katan. That's why I recognized her. Yes. God damn that! Yeah.
Which is cool. She's probably the only person in history that started as a cartoon character that she voiced and now actually plays her as live action as well, which is pretty cool.
That's pretty fantastic. I like that.
Nobody else involved got away with it.
The first person to do that was Forrest Whitaker.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
Yes, he did.
That's my bit of nerd knowledge.
Damn it! You got me there.
But it is impressive that she's managed to go on. But it looks like everyone who was in this movie, they've gone on to work, but they've worked primarily in TV. Even the ones who came in with like Sean Patrick Thomas kind of had a name at this point in early 2000s.
Yeah, and he was leading a lot of teen films and stuff as well.
Thomas Ian Nichols from American Pie.
Yeah.
You know, he's after this has kind of gone on to be the least successful from the American Pie franchise. Weirdly,
was he Rookie of the Year?
Oh, sorry, was he
Rookie of the Year? Yeah,
I think it was him. Luke Kirby, who I didn't even recognize him in this movie, but he went on to play in Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. He played Lenny Bruce, and he's phenomenal in that, and has gotten awards and accolades, deservedly so, because he's absolutely staggering how good he is in that show. Especially if you know anything about Lenny Bruce, he fucking, oh my God, he nails it. But yeah, this movie is kind of like, you know, I know Tyra Banks is doing fine. Like, no one cry for Tyra Banks.
Which again,
but she also hasn't really made movies after this.
But it's funny that I don't know when she started her reality career, but she's been pretty much a reality television, you know, top supermodel, model, whatever those shows that she's been on.
She
for a long
literally
time.
started her reality TV show
As if
the
you
year
don't
after
watch
this. So she made Halloween Resurrection 2002. In 2003, she was Next Top Model. She was like, you know what? She's the one person who is trying something in this movie.
The brain box behind Next Top Model.
Yeah.
And she's fucking coffee.
Yeah.
Nick, top new barista. Next Top Model.
Yeah. What is she making? What is that?
Unbelievable.
and she's like dancing and like pouring milk.
But see, this is the thing that, like, again, comes back to like I guess how much we're bagging this film. Even that is
here as well.
They're trying to come up with this convoluted way for her not to see the screen and what's happening on the screen.
Yeah.
So she's making a coffee, and it, like you said, it's so ridiculously over the top, and she's dancing around, and the whipped cream, so she's not seeing the screen. And it's like, but that's just so stupid. Like, okay, I know you don't want her to look at the screen, but just have her do something else that's just not ridiculously over the top. And yeah, and again, it's a stupid scene.
I mean, everything about this is just.
Well, that probably sums it all up, doesn't it? That scene, the making the coffee, just sums up what the fuck happened in this film.
Yeah,
that encapsulates it all.
Yeah, the only other thing that stood out for me, and it just adds to the list of what the fuck. But in the opening of the film, when they play the classic theme to Halloween, it sounds shit. It sounds
garbage.
It's like they deliberately re-recorded it on like the world's shittest Casio with someone who learnt piano that day. They're like, hey, can you copy this? And they're like, all right. Like, it just sounds atrocious. The score the whole way through is atrocious, but just use the original score. I'm sure you've got the rights. You own the rights to Halloween movies. You must own the rights to the score. Like, did you decide, fuck it? No, we want it to be worse? Well, like, it would have been better if they did like an 8-bit version to be like, this is the computer one. So we're going to do an 8-bit version of the Halloween thing to let you guys know this is the computer one. Like,
we're in the internet now.
Yeah.
Sounded. Fuck.
Well, it's funny you bring up rights, and I don't want us to go down a rabbit hole and stretch this podcast any more than it needs to be stretched. But I do wonder, when you say about rights, whether something to do with music maybe is still a bit of an issue at the time, even though Miramax has got the character, and maybe that's also something to do with the mask. Maybe why the mask in these two films are pretty shit and not really enough like the original. I wonder is there something weird about rights there, possibly, because it does feel like, it's like, oh, here's the Myers version in the first couple of movies. Well, Myers, funny. But that was totally unintended. But then these movies are like the Kmart version. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just it's like, oh, we've just got the budget. Oh, the guy down the road can whip up something and make it look like that one. Like, it's just.
Yeah, I for one, I'm glad that Rob Zombie stepped in after this. I think it drags the whole franchise in a much more positive direction, which I will get to in another day. But given how contentious the Rob Zombie films are, like the idea that they should be a reprieve from how torturous this film is, I think speaks volumes for the end result of Resurrection. I think it's
is there any redeemable qualities to this movie? Like, I definitely enjoyed the absurdity of Busta Rhymes' character more this time than I ever have before. And perhaps that's what Kate was talking about, where the bar was it was set so low that when you came in this time, you're kind of like, all right. Like, every other time I've watched, I'm like, what are you doing here? But even in saying that, I'm still infuriated that a character like that is in a Halloween movie, because it is so out of place with what has been established before. Is there anything that you guys walked away from being like, well, that bit?
Uh...
The silence speaks volumes.
I honestly, like, there was because look, here's the thing, right? Is I've probably talked to you guys about it before. I know how hard it is to make a fucking film, right? It's not an easy thing. Not even to make a fucking film like Halloween, right? Just to make a film, just to have it go from A to B to C in a logical, sensible order and have it make sense, let alone be able to manipulate the viewer's emotions, right? Not to make them ask big questions or hold a mirror up to society. Just make the fucking film make sense to go from A to B to C, right? So I'm always, always, always willing to give the fact that I'm watching it, well done, dude. Well done, right? That's fucking hard, right? It's a hard fucking thing. So there's always going to be that part of me. I'll always advocate for the smaller films. it doesn't matter. Like, there's a bunch of Melbourne filmmakers where the podcast is like, there's a bunch of Melbourne filmmakers who will make feature films on an oily rag that by anybody else's standard would be a fucking labor to watch. I'll sit down and watch it. Man, you did it.
Yeah.
Well done, man. I'll give
Absolutely,
you the time
yeah.
and I will fucking watch it, right? It's fucking hard to find something in Resurrection, dude. It is fucking hard. Maybe the cinematography, but even then, it's a little pedestrian. You're like, well, I've kind of seen it all before. Maybe the pacing. The credits sucked. The music sucked.
Oh, the credits
Characters sucked.
I forgot about the credits. Jesus.
Well, you talk about
Like
the cinematography, but they have a scene in this movie where they literally have a guy explain what makes for a good angle. And he's like, down low,
Yeah.
scary, up low, scary, straight on, not scary. And then they shoot the whole movie straight on.
Straight on.
They don't do any fucking below
There's
or
no
up, it's
imagination
just
to
fucking down the barrel.
yeah.
In fact, there is
just-
one
it's-
scene in the movie when the three kids run to the door and put the jack-o'-lantern on the doorstep for no conceivable reason. The three kids, at different points in that very short shot, barrel the camera. They look directly down the lens, like they're kids. They're on set. It's probably their first time ever on a movie set. They're running along, and like one by one, they kind of nervously dart and they look down the camera, and they kept that in. Like, they didn't go, hey, can we do that one more time? And guys, just remember, don't look at the camera. They went, we got it. That's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
My God,
Right.
the lack of fucking effort.
That probably for me, actually, Angus, I reckon you've just nailed it there, mate. I reckon that's what it is for me. I reckon that's where Halloween Resurrection sits. It's an exercise in frustration because of the lack of effort. The lack in effort of
lack of care as well.
yeah. But like the lack of effort to make the title cards look appealing. The lack of effort to not give Jamie Lee Curtis these horrendous lines and ask her to try and do something with it. The lack of effort to make the music worthwhile. The lack of effort to not have Busta Rhymes be a shit actor. Like it's just the lack of effort across the board, and it's disappointing.
And like you said, like this,
it's disappointing.
But even the final girl, there's nothing memorable about her. That she's not compelling. And like you said, like it could have been that she was going to be the final girl, and Busta Rhymes was dead, and they're like, no, we've got it. He's the only charismatic person in this movie. We've got to just make him the hero now. Because
they kind of set up the Deckard as going to be the third act hero and come and save her because he's watching it all, and then he just doesn't. He just sits and watches.
Yes, actually, that's the fake out
Yeah.
That's the fake out that you think he's the one bursting back through the shed doors, and it's just it's Busta Rhymes with his kung fu.
I wonder if originally in the script it was that guy, and then they started shooting and like, well, this guy's got no fucking personality either. We need someone who's going to actually bring some energy to the final shot.
Yeah.
And again, we got Busta. That's it. He's somehow the best actor in this movie.
And that's fucking damning him with faint praise, mate. Like that is Jesus wept. No, it's a crushing disappointment. For me, it's a crushing disappointment.
Yeah, rough stuff. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's anywhere else to go, and I don't know if this movie is worth any more of our time. Have we said everything we want to say?
I think so.
Great. I mean, I genuinely can't think of anything else. Like it's probably going to be another 5 years. I'll revisit it in 5 years' time. I'll be the dad of a 5-year-old, and I'll be like, maybe I'll watch how the kids are, and mom's out, and I'm just going to sit down and watch how, and I'll be crushed again. I'll be crushed for the 5th time.
I thought you were going to say, like, I'll be the dad of a 5-year-old and he'll, like, draw on the couch and I'll be like, your punishment is you're watching Halloween Resurrection. Sit down, son. Let me show you what happens when you're naughty.
Use it as punitive justice. Amazing.
Good kids get Halloween. Bad kids get Halloween Resurrection.
Yeah, good. Well done.
Thank you for joining us, Shaun. Thank you for joining us, listeners. And remember, even though this one definitely does, not all sequels suck. Hey, sequel suck fans.
By definition alone, they're inferior films.
I almost remake a quick warning of this episode is
film.
Click over. You can go crazy.